so nice to see that you're almost on time for an appointment for once. 10 minutes late isn't too shabby for you in my books. Though, if I didn't know better, I'd assume you hated me. There are no hurt feelings to be had here, though I'm sure you meant that apology with a level of sarcasm when you mentioned it. The concern here is not about me wasting my time. It's about you wasting yours. You have a mandated 600 hours of therapy that has to be undertaken within a number of professionals the court suggested, and I just happen to be one of them. I realize this, but I feel like you haven't had the opportunity to realize that the time we spend together could be a productive one. You seem to be fixated on relating to me as little as you possibly can, and although I cannot ask for more than you can give me, I can fill my bucket with nothing but mud and expect to render sweet cherry wine from it. Well, I suppose when in Rome, we do as the Romans do. I have no idea what motivated you to bludgeon 5 people to death with the blunt handle of a fire axe, and, frankly, it matters as much as it doesn't. I know. I'm a psychiatrist employed by the FBI, made to sniff out the motives of violent criminals, such as yourself. And as much as it matters, it doesn't. Edmund Kemper himself said that he was motivated by sadism. He killed his victims because he was evicting them from their bodies so he could possess them, at least temporarily, after death. For all the same reasons that Charles Manson wasn't deliberately trying to incite a race war, he was just trying to throw off the cops and just also happened to have a swastika tattooed on his forehead. You know, funny little coincidences like that. It's always just far more interesting when there's a reason for people like you to do what you do. I'd certainly sell more tell-all books that way, but let's face it. When every single D-list serial killer, such as yourself, is guaranteed 15 minutes of fame as the police trip over themselves like a tiny circus car on the verge of crashing into another, even tinier, circus car, it's no wonder why mass murder is not only so prolific, but mass murderers like yourself take months, if not years, to be caught. The Ted Bundy case is famous for this kind of incompetence, with a notable highlight of this particular brand of tomfuckery being that a victim that escaped Ted Bundy being handed right back to the man by the very people who were supposedly supposed to help them. Not to mention the fact that he gained a quality of being somewhat of a lady killer Casanova super genius that women couldn't resist flocking to his side, when, in reality, he always played the role of some wounded dog in order to convince women to help him, preying on humanity's better nature as a whole to complete his vile deeds. I don't think profiling serial killers is a bunk science per se. I mean, I'd be out of a job if I really thought something like that with all my heart. But the police dropped the ball back in the 1960s when they put out a call for a black Zodiac killer when every victim that survived said he was white. And they're still dropping the ball to this day with stupid fucking kids like you and me. I mean, 6 months in prison with only 10,000 hours of community service and 600 of them therapy? Do you really think that you swung the verdict based on your own merit? If that's really the case, then maybe more than your mental state needs to be evaluated at this rate. Oh, had they dropped the ball with me? Well, I suppose we're all friends here, are we not? It's not like they'll believe you of all people, after all. From a young age, I've had a fascination with picking apart intricate structures to see how they worked, but I was never too good at putting them back together. My family decided that, for the sake of sparing their analog clocks and electric toothbrushes, to put me to work out in nature, and seeing what I could mangle out there in my scientific attempts at precision. I must have wandered too close to the road because I encountered something rather strange at the youthful age of 7. A dead possum. Possums are common animals, of course, but I had never, in all my years, encountered a dead one before. I was never afforded the chance, I suppose. And so, on that dirt road, in front of God and anybody who was unfortunate enough to drive by, I cracked open its skull and ripped it open by splitting its skull open from the sheer force it would take to pull it apart, and made work on the skin from there. The sound was haunting, but also melodic in its own way. It made exactly the sound I thought it would, that rippling crack heard around the world, and the ecstasy I felt for the first time I heard that sound is indescribable in its own right. The possum died with a head-on collision with a car, if that matters to you. It wasn't all that much about the initial discovery. It was about the fact that there were things to discover at all. The fact that when a carcass was put onto your table, with scientific certainty and reasoning, you'd be able to figure out what was the precise problem that caused the animal to keel over before its time. It fascinated me. The process of dissection became as much as an obsession as it is a love language for me, in its own way. I mean, what's more intimate than being rendered bloody and raw and open to the world in all of its cruelty, in the most vulnerable state you could be in? It satiated a hunger I didn't even know I had. And once I hungered, I was certain at all times that I was on the verge of outright starving. And so I feasted and feasted and ate until I was full, only to starve in its absence. I never really yearned for anything before. Never really wanted anything as much as I did this little paradise I had found for myself. And when you give something that never so much as needed anything, something to want, what else that was I supposed to do if not crave that with all that I am, with all that I can be? So, I did. I got a job as a lab tech and continued my work until my cravings carried me someplace where the law couldn't follow. Simple as that. What? Did you really want to hear the full dramatic arc about how I moved on to dissecting human flesh that didn't enter the room blue and cold, and how I managed to get away with it all in my divine craftiness and wonder? Or even how I shifted to psychiatry, of all things, dissecting the mind after dissecting the flesh? I'd be happy to explain how digging through this human psyche almost gives me the same thrill as rooting through the body of a beast with my bare hands in the backwoods of Lithuania, but you were 10 minutes late today. All the more reason to be on time next week, is it not?